Today we're going to talk about the biggest mistake to avoid when teaching comprehension. It's a mistake I've made, and I'd like to help you avoid making it too. If you're new here, my name is Geiger. I'm the author of Reach All Readers, creator of the Reach All Readers course and podcast, and I'm here to help you understand and apply the science of reading. Let's start with a situation I know you've seen before. You have a student who's read a text, and then you get to the end of it, and they can't answer the questions. Why? What happened? Was it a few words they didn't understand? A sentence? A whole paragraph? The whole thing? There's no way to know if we only ask our questions at the end of the reading. End of text questions are often doing the work of assessment, not instruction. Now, having students discuss, answer questions, and even write about the text they've read after reading are all very important things to do. Writing about text in particular actually strengthens the comprehension of it. The problem is when all of this happens after reading without enough support during reading, and we're left trying to figure out where comprehension broke down. Today I want to challenge you to think about using questions not just to check comprehension, but to guide and support comprehension as it's being built. When questions come only at the end of the reading, here's what's happening. Students read or listen, they respond to the questions, and we find out whether or not they understood. That information is useful. But it comes after the meaning making has already happened. If comprehension broke down during the reading, end of the reading questions won't fix it. They don't repair the breakdown. They just tell us there was one. End of text questions are good. They're just not good enough on their own. Now, just to be clear, questioning is supported by research as a way to build comprehension, especially when questions are asked during reading and when students are encouraged to ask their own questions. Proficient readers ask questions. Questioning pushes readers forward in their understanding of the text. The issue is relying on these end-of-text questions in isolation, instead of as one part of what we might call a comprehension system. And that's the biggest mistake to avoid when teaching comprehension, asking questions only at the end of the reading. When questions are used instructionally, they serve a different role. They guide attention. They support meaning-making. They help students monitor comprehension as they read. One well-researched approach is called questioning the author. In fact, there's a whole book about it. Questioning the author is built on an important idea that comprehension is a shared responsibility between the author and the reader. Yes, it's the reader's job to make sense of the text, but it's also the author's job to communicate ideas clearly, and authors don't always do that. Questioning the author frees students to grapple with the text instead of assuming confusion's always their fault. It's a discussion guided by the teacher. The teacher and students stop intentionally at predetermined spots determined by the teacher and ask questions of the author and the text. Namely, what's the author trying to tell us here? Why is the author telling us that? Does the author explain this clearly? And how does this connect to what the author said earlier? These are not recall questions. They help students notice confusion, clarify meaning, and collaboratively build understanding as the text unfolds. So let's take a look at what this might look like with a text from my membership site, Reach All Readers Plus. In the membership, we have a large collection of reading comprehension passages in different levels of difficulty. So let's say we want to work with this one, this Helen Keller passage. It includes a lesson plan, as well as differentiated passages and resources for building vocabulary and more. Let's go ahead and look at the second level passage. All right, so this is about Helen Keller, and listen to me read the first two paragraphs, and then we can look at how we might use questioning the author with this text. Many years ago, a girl named Helen Keller was born in Alabama. Helen was born as a bright baby who could see and hear. But when she was very young, Helen got sick. After the illness, Helen could not see or hear. She had become blind and deaf. Helen made signs with her hands, but her family didn't always understand. Helen became upset. She kicked, hit, screamed, and threw things. Her parents did not know how to help her learn. We could stop after reading those first two paragraphs with the class and ask the first question the author question. What is the author trying to tell us here? In this second paragraph, the author is trying to tell us that Helen had trouble communicating. So her family didn't understand her, so that made her upset, and she would kick and hit and scream, and her parents didn't know how to help. The next question would be, why is the author trying to tell us that? Well, maybe the author is trying to explain the problem so it can set us up to learn what fixed the problem. Before we read this passage, we built some background knowledge about Helen Keller. We know that she grew up to be a leader in the blind deaf community and in the world. So there must be something that changes for her. This is setting us up to learn what that is. Does the author explain this clearly? Well, it says that she made signs. Her family didn't understand. She became upset. Yeah, I think it explains things clearly. The last question is, how does this connect to what the author said earlier? Well, earlier in the passage, we learned that Helen was born with normal abilities. She could see and she could hear. But then we learned that she got sick, and that caused her to have problems with communicating, and that led to her being angry and upset. So do you see how talking through those questions helps us monitor our comprehension? It helps us move along through the text and think about how all the ideas connect together. Another example of an instructional strategy that uses questioning is called get the gist, or paragraph shrinking. This is well supported by research for building text-level fluency, and of course it also builds comprehension. After reading a paragraph, students stop and ask two purposeful questions. First, what is this paragraph mainly about? What's the main who or what? And second, what's the most important thing about the who or what in the paragraph? Then we combine that information into a sentence that is 10 words or fewer. Going back to our Helen Keller passages, let's go ahead and move on to the third level passage. Helen's parents found her a special teacher named Anne Sullivan. Anne had been blind herself as a child, so she understood Helen's challenges. At first, Helen was a very difficult student. She hurt Anne badly, even knocking out some of her teeth during one of her tantrums. But this patient teacher never gave up on Helen. One day, Anne put one of Helen's hands under running water from a pump. Then she repeatedly wrote the word W-A-T-E-R in Helen's other hand with her finger. Finally, Helen learned that everything in the world has a name. So if this is the first time we're doing this strategy, I'm going to want to make sure I do a lot of modeling. So I might say to my students, let me think about what the most important who or what is in this paragraph. Well, I could pick Helen or I could pick Anne. I think I'm going to say that this paragraph is mainly about Helen. So what's the most important thing I learned about Helen in this paragraph? It's that Anne helped her understand that everything in this world has a name. So let me put that together in a sentence. Helen learned through Anne that everything in the world has more than 10 words. That's too long. Let me try again. I think I'll start with Anne. Anne helped Helen learn that everything has a name. You can see there are many different ways to summarize the paragraph, but the point is it's getting us into the text, helping us figure out what it's about and what's the most important thing to remember. If we can't figure that out, that's a clue to us that comprehension is broken down somewhere and we need to get some help to understand the text. Instructional questioning also involves stopping at different points to turn and talk. The turn and talk could be what I just showed you. It could be getting the gist with a partner. It can also be stopping at predetermined points where the teacher has prepared a question in advance for students to answer with a partner, often using a sentence starter. Let's go back to our Helen Keller passages, this time with a level 1 passage. We're reading this together, maybe as a class, or students are reading in pairs, and we're posing a question at the end of the final paragraph. So the final paragraph says, even though she was deaf and blind, Helen went to college, wrote books, and met 12 presidents. Helen showed that people with disabilities can do amazing things. So I might say, after reading that paragraph, turn to your partner, and ones, I want you to finish this sentence. 3 amazing things that Helen did are, so they might say, 3 amazing things that Helen did are going to college, writing books, and meeting presidents. I want to talk about one more way you can use questioning to help students understand texts as you're working through it, and that is called request. Now, I've used request at the end of the reading, but you can certainly use it after each paragraph when you're reading the text with your students. So when you're reading it with your students, maybe choral reading or echo reading, or in pairs and stopping at different stopping points, at different points in the reading, you're going to have students ask you questions about the text. So let's say, back again with our Helen Keller passage, let's say we're reading the level 5 passage and we stop after the first paragraph. The students are going to ask me, the teacher, a question, and I can answer it, but I need to try to answer it without looking at my text. This might be something to do with the second reading of the text when students are more familiar with it. So they might ask me, what tragedy happened to Helen? And I would say, well, when Helen was a baby, she got sick and she became blind and deaf. Then we switch it around. Then I ask them a question and they're not allowed to look as they answer it. I might say, what illness did Helen Keller have that caused her to be blind and deaf? And the students would say, it was either scarlet fever or meningitis. In addition to having the students ask the teacher a question and the teacher answer, and the teacher ask the student and have them answer, you can also Talk about the quality of the questions. If the answer cannot be found in the text itself, you might ask students to ask a different kind of question. These are questions where we really want to be able to use the text to prove or support our answer. So in all of these examples I've shared, questioning is not an afterthought. Questions are used to guide comprehension, support meaning making, and help students monitor understanding. Asking questions at the end of reading is important, but it's best when it's part of this larger comprehension system. If you want to dive deeper into this topic, you're invited to my workshop, Building Comprehension from the Ground Up. In that training, we'll bust common myths related to comprehension, look at what the research truly says, and equip you with tips and tools that you can use to improve reading comprehension for your students tomorrow. Whether or not you join the workshop, I encourage you to consciously avoid that biggest mistake when it comes to teaching comprehension, and that is asking questions only at the end. Instead, plan and prepare questions to ask during the reading, so you can build and monitor comprehension as you go. Stay tuned for future videos about comprehension, where we'll look at how you can intentionally plan these questions in advance. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.